My aunt said that adopted kids weren't real family and banned me from the reunion. Only blood relatives at the Anderson family gathering. She smiled. I smiled and opened the DNA test results. Funny you should mention blood, Aunt Karen. They say blood is thicker than water, but I've learned that DNA can be thicker than both. Especially when it comes to family secrets. My name is Mel Anderson, and until 3 months ago, I thought being adopted was the biggest surprise of my life. I was wrong. I was adopted at birth by James and Maria Anderson, the most loving parents anyone could ask for. They never hid the fact that I was adopted. It was just part of our family story. Like Dad's terrible dad jokes or Mom's award-winning apple pie. Being adopted never made me feel less of an Anderson. At least not until Aunt Karen decided to make it an issue. It started when the invitations went out for the Anderson family grand reunion. Grandpa Anderson was turning 90, and the entire extended family was gathering at his sprawling farmhouse in Vermont for a week-long celebration. Cousins were flying in from across the country, uncles and aunts were taking time off work, and everyone was talking about making it the biggest family event in Anderson history. Everyone except Karen, that is. As Grandpa's oldest daughter and self-appointed guardian of the Anderson family legacy, she had taken charge of planning the reunion. And apparently she had some very specific ideas about who counted as family. I found out about her views during a family dinner at my parents' house. Karen was showing Mom the draft guest list, rambling about accommodations and meal plans. Of course, we'll need accurate numbers, she said, not quite looking at me. This is a gathering for true Andersons. Only blood relatives. The table went quiet. Dad's fork clattered against his plate. What exactly are you saying, Karen? Mom's voice had that dangerous edge I rarely heard. Well, Aunt Karen smoothed her designer blouse. You understand, don't you? This is about family heritage, about celebrating the Anderson bloodline. Michelle is lovely, of course, but she's not really an Anderson. Not really an Anderson. The words hit like a physical 28 years of family holidays, shared memories, love, and belonging, all dismissed because I didn't share their DNA. That's ridiculous. Dad started, but Aunt Karen cut him off. James, be reasonable. This isn't about feelings. It's about preserving our family's history. The reunion will feature a presentation about the Anderson genealogy, displays of family heirlooms, discussions about inherited traits. Michelle would feel out of place. The only one making Michelle feel out of place is you, Mom snapped, but Aunt Karen wasn't finished. Besides, I've already discussed it with the reunion committee. We all agree. Blood relatives only. It's simpler that way. The reunion committee consisted of Karen's daughter, Jessica, and 2 cousins who had never dared to disagree with her. I had grown up with Jessica, shared clothes and secrets through our teenage years, and now she couldn't even meet my eyes across the table. This is insane, Dad declared. If Michelle's not welcome, none of us are going. Don't be dramatic, James, Karen chided. You're the eldest son. You have to be there. And Maria's been helping Grandpa organize his old photographs for the family history display. You can't abandon your responsibilities just because Michelle's feelings are hurt. I found my voice. Then don't worry about it, Dad. I wouldn't want to taint the precious Anderson bloodline with my adopted presence. Michelle. My mom reached for my hand, but I was already standing. I mean it. Go to the reunion. Grandpa deserves to have his whole family there for his birthday. His real family. According to Aunt Karen, I left the house despite my parents' protests. Driving home to my apartment, I couldn't stop thinking about all the little moments over the years when Karen had subtly emphasized my outsider status. The Christmas she gave all the grandkids family heirloom jewelry except me. The way she introduced me as James and Maria's adopted daughter rather than just her niece. But something else was bothering me. Something about the way she had been so insistent about blood relatives. Only it seemed excessive, even for Karen, like she was afraid of something. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about the family photos Mom had been organizing for Grandpa's birthday. One in particular stuck in my mind. A faded Polaroid from a family picnic the year before I was adopted. Something about Karen's expression in that photo, the way she was standing apart from the group. The next morning I called in sick to my job at the architectural firm and drove to my parents' house. Mom was at work, but I had a key. The boxes of old photos were still spread across the dining room table. I found the picnic photo easily enough. Summer of 1994, 3 months before my birth parents chose the Andersons to adopt me. The whole family was there, lounging on checkered blankets, paper plates balanced on their laps. Everyone looked relaxed. In the old Polaroid, everyone looked relaxed and happy. Except Karen. She stood at the edge of the frame, one hand pressed against her stomach, her face turned away from the camera. She was wearing a loose sundress, unusual for someone who usually favored tailored clothes. And according to the date stamp, this was taken just 6 months before she married Uncle Steve in what Mom always called a rushed ceremony. A crazy idea started forming in my mind. I was born in January 1995. Karen married Steve in December 1994. The timing. But no, it couldn't be, could it? I took a photo of the Polaroid with my phone and opened my laptop. Over the next few hours, I dove deep into research. Hospital records from that time were mostly digitized now. It took some creative searching, but finally I found what I was looking for: a birth record from St. Mary's Hospital, January 15, 1995. My birth record. My birth mother's name was listed as Jane Doe, common in closed adoptions. But there was something else. A nurse's note, probably misfiled during digitization. Patient requested complete confidentiality. Family connection to hospital board member K.A. noted. K.A. Karen Anderson. My hands were shaking as I pulled up the website for a major DNA testing company. I'd always avoided these services before, respecting my birth parents' wish for privacy. But now the test kit arrived 2 days later. As I swabbed my cheek, I thought about Karen's insistence on blood relatives only at the reunion. About all the years of subtle digs and careful distance. About how she'd never once asked if I wanted to find my birth parents when most relatives had brought it up at least once. 6 weeks later, my phone pinged with the DNA results already. And that's when everything I thought I knew about family began to unravel. The DNA results loaded slowly, each new section revealing another piece of an impossible puzzle. First came the ethnic breakdown, predominantly Northern European, just like the Andersons. Then the health markers showing the same predisposition to high blood pressure that ran in the Anderson family. But it was the relative matches that made my heart stop. Close family matched Jessica Anderson estimated relationship half-siblings. Below that close family matched James Anderson estimated relationship father. My father wasn't my uncle. He was my father biologically, which meant Karen was my mother. The room started spinning. I grabbed my phone, hands shaking, and called Mom. Not my birth mother. My mom. The only mom who had ever mattered. Michelle, she answered on the first ring. What's wrong? I need you and Dad to come over now and bring that photo album from 1994. They arrived 20 minutes later, finding me still staring at my laptop screen. Without a word, I turned it to face them. Oh, God, Mom whispered, sinking onto my couch. Dad's face went pale. How long have you known? I asked. We didn't, Dad said quickly. Not for certain. We suspected, but Karen never confirmed it. Mom took my hand when we were chosen for adoption. We were told it was a closed adoption through the hospital. But the social worker, she hinted that there was a family connection. We thought maybe a distant relative. Then at the hospital, I saw Karen in the maternity ward. She said she was visiting a friend, but she begged us not to tell anyone. Dad continued. She said it would destroy her life, her chances with Steve. We agreed because we wanted you so badly. And we were afraid that if we didn't, she'd change her mind. I swallowed hard. The pieces were falling into place. Karen's distance, her insistence on keeping me separate from real family events, her obsession with bloodlines and heritage. We should have told you. Mom was crying now, but as the years passed, it seemed kinder not to. You were ours. Completely ours. The how didn't matter. I looked at them. These parents who had chosen me, loved me, protected me even from the truth. Does Grandpa know? I asked. Dad shook his head. I don't think so. Karen told everyone she was staying with a cousin in Maine during that time. I looked at the reunion invitation still sitting on my coffee table. The Anderson family grand reunion was starting in 3 days. Karen's carefully orchestrated celebration of family history was about to become something very different. I'm going, I announced. Michelle, Mom started. No. I shook my head. I'm tired of hiding who I am, of being made to feel less than. Karen wants to celebrate Anderson blood. Fine. Let's celebrate it. The reunion was in full swing when we arrived at Grandpa's farm. Cars lined the long driveway, kids ran across the sprawling lawn, and the smell of barbecue filled the air. A large banner proclaimed "Welcome Anderson Family." Karen's perfect calligraphy. She spotted us immediately, her face darkening. I thought we discussed this, she said, stepping forward to block our path. This gathering is for blood relatives only. Karen crossed her arms over her chest, wearing that haughty expression she always used when asserting her authority over the family. But this time, I didn't feel intimidated. She had excluded me for years, but now I knew the truth. I have just as much right to be here as anyone else, I said firmly. She let out a dry, humorless laugh filled with disdain. Oh, really? And since when do bastards count as legitimate family members? Heat rushed to my face so fast that my fists clenched involuntarily. My father, my real father, stiffened beside me, and my mother grabbed my arm as if she knew I was on the verge of losing control. Bastard, I repeated, my voice shaking with anger. You have the audacity to call me that after hiding from everyone that I'm your daughter? The silence around us grew heavy. People who had been chatting and laughing around the farmhouse began to take notice. I saw Jessica, my half-sister, standing a few feet behind Karen, her eyes wide in confusion. What are you talking about? Karen tried to keep her composure, but I noticed the slight tremor in her hands. I pulled my phone from my pocket and opened the DNA test results, turning the screen toward her. This is what I'm talking about. My genes don't lie, Karen. You may have fooled everyone for almost 30 years, but science doesn't fail. She stared at the screen, and for a brief moment, I saw the horror in her eyes. But Karen was good at masking her emotions. She forced out a laugh, though her voice was shaky. This is ridiculous. You must have faked this somehow. I wouldn't fake a DNA test. But you know who did fake something for nearly 3 decades? You. Jessica stepped forward, her expression shifting from confusion to shock. Mom, what is she saying? This can't be true, right? Karen turned to her daughter, and for the first time, I saw something close to panic in her eyes. I took my chance. I'll tell you what's true, Jessica. Your mother got pregnant when she was 20 and decided to keep it a secret. She didn't want it to ruin her marriage to Steve, so she gave me up for adoption. But she couldn't leave me with just anyone, so she placed me within the family. Guess who my real father is? Jessica blinked rapidly, looking from her mother to my father, our father. James Anderson. Dad, she whispered, her voice breaking. My father said nothing, but his face darkened, his lips pressed into a tense line. He had always been a calm man, but now he looked like he was barely holding himself together. This can't be, Jessica murmured, stepping back. Karen finally reached for her daughter. Sweetheart, don't listen to this girl. She's just trying to stir up trouble. Trouble. I let out a bitter laugh. You destroyed my life. You spent years treating me like an outsider, excluding me, making me feel like I was never enough, and now that the truth is out, you want to act like I'm the villain. Karen snapped. I did what I had to do. I saved my marriage. And you destroyed my identity in the process. I shot back. You never treated me like family because, deep down, seeing my face reminded you of what you did, didn't it? Of what you abandoned. You chose to push me away instead of dealing with your own guilt. The guests around us were shifting uncomfortably. My uncles, aunts, and even Grandpa Anderson stood there, watching, unsure of what to say. Jessica still looked shaken, her eyes filling with tears. You knew, Mom? You knew and never told me. Of course not, honey, Karen insisted, her voice trembling. She's lying. I pulled out my phone again and reopened the DNA test results. If I'm lying, then prove it. Here's the evidence. Here's the bloodline you love so much, Karen. She froze. She had no argument against science. Jessica took another step back, as if seeing her mother for the first time. Oh my God, it's true. Karen reached for her again. Jessica, please. Don't touch me. Jessica pulled away. You lied to me. You always told me that family was everything, that blood was what mattered most, and now we find out that you hid your own daughter. Karen was beginning to hyperventilate. I watched as her face paled, her eyes darting between Jessica, me, and the crowd around us. She was losing control. I did it for you, for us.
No, Mom.
You did it for yourself. I turned to my father, who had remained silent, watching the chaos unfold. You knew, I said, my voice quieter now. You suspected, but you never told me. My father swallowed hard. I swear, I thought we were doing the right thing. The right thing? My voice cracked. The right thing would have been telling me the truth. The right thing would have been treating me like your daughter instead of a family secret. The murmurs around us grew louder. My uncles and cousins exchanged uneasy glances. The Anderson family, the one that had always prided itself on being so tight-knit, was crumbling before everyone's eyes. Grandpa Anderson finally stepped forward, leaning on his cane.
Karen.
Is this true? She didn't answer. Her silence was all the confirmation anyone needed. I took a deep breath, feeling something shift inside me, freedom. You know what? Thank you, Karen. Because it was your arrogance, your insistence on excluding me, that led me to the truth. You tried to erase me from this family's history, but now, everyone knows exactly who I am. Karen had no words. For the first time in her life, she had no response. And for the first time in my life, I finally felt like I belonged. The silence after the revelation was overwhelming. Karen remained motionless, her skin so pale she looked like she might faint. Jessica couldn't stop staring at her, as if she were seeing her mother for the first time. My father was still tense, as if he knew that nothing he said could erase what had just happened. And me? I was burning inside. After years of being treated like an outsider, as if I had never truly been an Anderson, everything finally made sense. Karen despised me because I was a living reminder of her dirty secret. And yet, she had the audacity to try and ban me from this reunion? She wanted so badly to celebrate the Anderson blood? Very well. She would get exactly that. I took a deep breath and stepped forward, making sure my voice was loud enough for everyone to hear. I really must thank you all for coming today. After all, this is a very special occasion. The Anderson family gathered to celebrate its origins, to remember our roots. Karen flinched, realizing where I was going with this. Mel, that's enough, she whispered, but I wasn't stopping now. Enough? I smiled, but there wasn't a trace of humor on my face. Enough is what you told me when you decided I wasn't part of this family. Enough is what you told me my entire life. Well, now it's my turn to say, enough with the lies. I turned to the rest of the family, who were still digesting the shock. You spent all these years looking at me with pity, as if I were a burden my parents took in out of charity. But guess what? I'm more of an Anderson than many of you. That doesn't mean anything. Karen tried to cut in, her voice higher-pitched than usual. A DNA test doesn't define a family. Funny, coming from you, I shot back, crossing my arms. You spent years preaching that blood is what matters. And now, suddenly, it doesn't? How convenient. This doesn't change anything, she insisted, trying to regain her composure. Oh, I think it changes a lot. I looked around. Because if you all really believe everything Karen has said about family, about lineage, then you must be wondering what else she has lied to you about. The eyes of my uncles and cousins narrowed. Some glanced at Karen with distrust. Others whispered among themselves. Grandpa Anderson was the one who broke the silence. Karen, he began, his voice hoarse and tired. Why did you never tell us? Karen blinked rapidly, as if searching for an answer. I did what I thought was best for everyone. For me, for Steve, for the family. I was young. I didn't know what to do. Jessica let out a short, bitter laugh. Didn't know what to do? So you decided to lie to everyone? Karen turned to her daughter, the desperation now showing on her face. Sweetheart, I did this for you too. I wanted you to have a life without scandals. I wanted to protect our family. You lied to me my entire life. Jessica interrupted. And now you expect me to just accept this? Sweetheart, please. Don't call me sweetheart. Jessica took a step back, moving away from her mother. You spent years teaching me that family is about loyalty, about trust. And now I find out that you have a hidden daughter? That you abandoned my sister? Karen reached out for Jessica, but she pulled away. My father, on the other hand, had remained silent. Until, finally, he looked at Karen and spoke. You knew I was the father? Karen froze. What? You knew I was the father from the start? Her expression changed. For a brief moment, I saw something in her face, fear. And that's when it hit me. My God, you knew. But you never told him. Shock washed over my father's face. Karen, you took my daughter away from me. That's not how it was. She shouted, her voice shaking. You couldn't know. You would have wanted to do the right thing, to take responsibility, and I couldn't let that happen. My father closed his eyes and shook his head slowly. You couldn't let it happen? I spent my entire life thinking I was just the older brother who helped raise his adoptive niece. And now I find out that I've spent nearly 30 years not knowing that my own daughter was right there the whole time. Karen was desperately trying to find the right words, but nothing she said could fix what she had done now. I laughed. A dry, bitter laugh. So that's it. You didn't reject me because I was adopted. You rejected me because deep down, you knew I belonged here. That if I ever found out the truth, you would lose everything. She said nothing. And guess what?
Now you have.
Karen looked around, as if expecting someone to speak in her defense. But no one did. Steve, her husband, stood on the house porch, his face pale. He, too, looked like he had just learned the truth. Steve, she tried to call out to him. He took a step back. I need some time. Karen stumbled, as if she had been physically struck. Grandpa Anderson cleared his throat. I think this conversation has gone on long enough. But there's one thing I need to make clear. Everyone turned to look at him. The Anderson family does not exclude anyone, least of all my granddaughter. My chest tightened at those words. You have always been part of this family, Mel, Grandpa continued. And it is a mistake that it took this long for it to be recognized. Karen took a step forward.
Dad, no.
You disgrace me, Karen.
His words hit her like a slap.
Her face twisted in shock and humiliation. I just wanted to protect the family. You wanted to protect yourself. Grandpa shot back. But now, everyone knows the truth. And it's up to each of them to decide what to do with it. Silence fell over the gathering. Karen looked around one last time, realized there was no one left to defend her, and lowered her head. I watched her as she turned and walked away. For the first time in her life, she was the outsider. And me? I had finally gotten my revenge. Karen was gone. No one followed her. No one defended her. The woman who had spent decades imposing her rules, deciding who was worthy of being called an Anderson and who wasn't, now found herself completely alone. And for the first time in her life, she was no longer in control. I felt something inside me loosen, as if a weight I had carried for years had finally been lifted. But it wasn't a feeling of triumph. It wasn't just the satisfaction of seeing Karen get what she deserved. It was something much deeper. It was the end of a life where I had to justify my own existence, prove that I had the right to be here. My father, my real father, James Anderson, still stood there, his face filled with devastation. He looked like a man who had aged 10 years in just a few minutes. His expression was one of someone who had just realized he had lost an entire lifetime with his own daughter. Mel. His voice cracked as he ran a hand down his face, exhausted. I can't ask you to forgive me. I swallowed hard. Part of me wanted to scream at him, to tell him that he should have protected me, that he should have known the truth. But looking at him now, with guilt etched into every line of his face, I realized something. Anger wouldn't change the past. You should have asked questions. My voice was firm, but the fire that had burned inside me earlier had cooled. You should have figured it out. You should have known. He lowered his head and nodded slowly. I know. And for the first time, I truly saw him. Not as the man who had always called me his niece, but as a father who had just discovered that he had missed almost 30 years of his daughter's life. I didn't know if I was ready to forgive him, but I knew I wanted to get to know him. I took a small step toward him and let out a breath. I can't promise I'll get over this anytime soon, but I'm willing to try. My father's eyes welled up with tears, and he nodded, his voice breaking. That means more than you know. Before I could say anything else, I felt someone step closer. Jessica, my sister. She looked different. The arrogance she had always carried, the superiority she had inherited from Karen, was gone. Instead, I saw uncertainty, guilt, and a deep sadness. She hesitated before speaking, her voice shaky. I don't know how to fix this, she admitted, but I want to try, if you'll let me. I studied her for a moment. For years, Jessica had been the perfect daughter, the one who fit into the idealized version of family that Karen had created. But now, that illusion had shattered. And in the end, all we had left was the truth. I want to try too. And for the first time in my life, I hugged my sister. The rest of the night passed in a blur of emotions. After Karen left, the atmosphere at the reunion shifted. My uncles and cousins approached me, some to apologize, others simply to really get to know me. Grandpa Anderson insisted that my name be officially added to the family records. Never again will we allow someone to be excluded, he said firmly. My mother, my real mother, Maria, never left my side. She had stayed silent through everything, but when we were finally alone, she took my hands and looked me straight in the eyes. I know today has been overwhelming for you, but I need you to know none of this changes how I feel about you. You have always been my daughter. A tear slipped down my cheek before I could stop it. I know, Mom, and I always will be. She pulled me into a tight hug, as if afraid that after all this, I might slip away from her. But I never would. She was my mother. She always had been. And Karen? She disappeared. After that night, she cut ties with the entire family. No one knew exactly where she went, and most didn't care to find out. She had exiled herself. Her marriage to Steve didn't survive. He couldn't forgive the fact that she had lied to him for their entire life together. The image he had of her, of a strong, principled woman, had shattered completely. Jessica tried to contact her after a few weeks. She never got a response. And honestly, that was probably for the best. Karen had spent her whole life trying to erase my existence. Now, fate had made her the one who disappeared. And me? For so long, I wondered who I was. Was I the adopted daughter? The niece? The outsider?
But now I knew.
I am Mel Anderson, daughter of James and Maria Anderson, sister to Jessica, granddaughter of Grandpa Anderson.
Part of this family.
I should have never had to fight for a place that was always mine. I should have never felt like I needed to justify my existence. But finally, no one could deny it anymore. The past couldn't be changed. The pain, the lies, the lost years, they couldn't be erased. But the future was mine now. And for the first time in my life, I knew exactly where I belonged.